So here I am continuing my quick tour of my whiskey collections on my shelves. What you can see now are two versions of the Talisker 10. You got the, let's say, the usual version you can buy nowadays, like in every corner, giving the coordinates of the Isle of Skye, of the distillery on the right side of the bottle, the classic, like modern label, the contemporary label. And now to a special bottling of the 10. So the content is basically the same. It's a special release, which is kind of exciting. So released for the 10th anniversary of Finest Whisky Shop in Berlin. He actually had the connections, the owner had the connections to let Diageo make his own label for an official bottling of the 10, mind you, not a independent bottling. And so he did this Talisker Finest Whisky, that's the shop name, Talisker Finest Whisky bottling. And if you look at the label, you know, this guy coming out of the waves, that's actually the owner with the trident. Yeah, and that's what is it, the tower? The lighthouse of the Isle of Skye. And you got the Isle of Skye coordinates on the left side, and on the right side you get different coordinates, and actually that's the coordinates of Finest Whisky located in Berlin. So I really think that's a neat addition, a neat collector's item, although the content is basically the same, Talisker 10. Okay, now let's continue. What do we have here? Glendronach 21 Parliament. Alright, behind that it's a Glendronach peated tube, but there's no Glendronach peated in it. I have forgotten what's in there, unfortunately. But then you have some, oh, that's a dreaded Ben Nevis, you know, sauerkraut and uhu notes. Whiskey bottled by independent bottler, Berlin independent bottler Jack Wiebers, 18-year-old. So it's been in this bottle for about 11 years now. Now behind that, also bottled by Jack Wiebers in Belantron, a peated Tom and Towel whiskey. And behind that you got in Glendronach, 17 years old, a single cask for Whisky Kanzler in Berlin. Very nice whiskey, unfortunately sold out for a long time. And behind that you got the Glendronach cask strength. And it's, ta-da, batch number 1. But I think it's almost empty, unfortunately. Really good whiskey. And behind that, there's another Glendronach single cask. And that's bottled in 2003, 13 years old. Anniversary bottling also for wine and whiskey in Berlin. Okay. So far so good. Let's continue, folks. Okay, to the right side we have a Glengarry 15 sherry cask, nice whiskey. Next to it a Glenelg's German whiskey, also matured in sherry casks. And then there's another Millennium cask bottling by Aaron. Okay, and to the side we have an 18-year-old Craigellachie independent bottling, Berlin bottling at a Vettercairn 7, matured in Portwood. And this Highland Park bottling has no Highland Park in it, but I put something else in it because the bottle was empty. And next to it we have a curiosity. It's Bagpiper. It's like in Indian, you know, it's not single malt. An Indian whiskey, they call it whiskey, but around here in Europe and in the US it is not allowed to be named whiskey because they also put like let's say rum into it basically, or the ingredients of rum, you know, sugarcane, fermented sugarcane, and mix it with some blended malt and call it whiskey. Okay, this is a Chivas Regal 12-year-old. Next to it is an 80s bottling, so much better, but also Chivas Regal 12. There's another Vat 69 old 1962 bottling. Behind the Chivas Regal you have a Hong Thong, or pardon my Aussprache, you know, I'm missing the word here. You know how you pronunciation. Pardon my pronunciation. It's a blended spirit from Thailand, very popular over there. Next to it, you got another of these, quote-unquote Indian whiskies, Royal Stag. Probably sells more than Johnny Walker worldwide, but it's not a whiskey in our eyes. In the front, you have two old bottlings by Haig, one with a lever cap or spring cap from 1962, and the other one should be in the 60s also, but it had later perhaps, or in the early 70s. Next to it, a modern Haig, gold label. Next to it, a pristine, very pristine black and white from 1962. And behind that you see the new black and white, just for comparison's sake. Also got the Highland Park 12, Highland Park 18. Behind there, normal bottlings. Behind this Haig, you got a Vet 69, also new version for comparison's sake. And there you can be, between these bottles, you can spot a classic of Islay. It's a... how do you say, like a lager? They bottle actually Lagavulin because the contracts are old and they still get Lagavulin. It's young Lagavulin, bottled independently. Up there you got a Millstone. That's a Dutch or Netherland whiskey, grade PX and peated. I think a single cask. I purchased in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam actually. That's an Edward straight from the cask, Burgundy cask, not really good. Very winey, but rough around the edges. They got the old Pulteney 17, pretty decent whiskey. And up there you got three, the colorful ones. The three are Clyrines. That's Haitian rum. It's called Clyrine, and there are three distinct craft distilleries, and it's very interesting stuff, very high ester count, so it's very fruity and overripe bananas and such. Next to it, PX, it's not a whiskey, but actually Pedro Jimenez sherry. And next to it you got a couple of, you need to look at the other videos, a couple of signatory vintage bottlings. Okay, let's go from right to left. A Lechic, sherry cask Lechic from 2004. Next to the Glen Grant, 18-year-old from 1992. And then in the middle you got the Ulrich, second edition, I think, the early bird. It's one of the best German whiskies in my eyes. Also, like from, I think sherry cask, and it's peated, but, not peated, but it's wood smoked, actually, over beech and elder wood. So you got an Imperial 18-year-old next to it by signatory, next to it a Kleinlich 16-year-old, and if you go, then you got a Cognac Daniel Beaujou, Cognac 40-year-old Cognac, and cask strength, very rare that they come out in cask strength, 50 ABV. Then you get a Black Cameron Brick, a 26-year-old single grain whiskey, and next to it you got the Jimenez Spinola. It's a brandy actually, but it can't be called brandy because it's PX grapes, and I think for brandy you can only use Palomino grapes, so they had to call it liqueur, but it's actually brandy done with PX grapes. There are these three rums, Centenario 30, but also Solera. It's not actually three rums, but because in the middle that's another cachaça, from Brazil, but it's aged cachaça, which is kind of more rare because most are drunk without aging in clear form. That's an Pampero Aniversario rum. And if what's missing, okay, let's go down in the middle. Down the middle you got a 20-year-old Tormore, very fruity whiskey by Single Cask Collection. That's an Austrian independent bottler. Next to it, also and behind, this one is a Glen Alba, I think it's a 22-year-old, and behind that a 27-year-old, also Lidl, blended Scotch whiskey with sherry cask finish. Quite neat for the price. Right was pretty cheap and they were quite alright. And this 12-year-old Benevis, it's very, very well integrated sherry and peat. Great whiskey, but was sold out very quickly. Single cask bottling from Hidden Spirits, an Italian independent bottler. Behind that you got a 17-year-old Longmorn, very dark sherry cask from 1996. Also, they had a couple of these bottlings, single casks, I think like 5 or 7 different ones. That's among the best ones, and unfortunately sold out for a long time. Behind that is my only, this green bottle in the middle is my only Scotch Malt Whisky Society bottling. And I've forgotten the distillery, but it's a 9-year-old very sherried malt. This is my living bottle. So with these things in there, a couple of bottlings, really nice. And behind this one is also an independent bottling by Jack Vibas. It's an Islay single malt whiskey, 6-year-old. Yeah, it's quite alright. Nothing to write home about, but it's okay. Behind that you got a 14-year-old Cragganmore, mind you 14-year-old. It's bottled for the Friends of Classic Malts in 2010. You know, it tastes a little bit different than the regular 12-year-old Cragganmore. Behind that you got a young Tomatin independent bottling, and this is a wonderful 20-year-old Bladnoch, which was quite inexpensive the time it came out. Like I bought it in 2013, somewhere around. Great stuff. Still some left. You know, it was very, yeah. This one I didn't show everybody because I knew I can't get it anymore, and so I'd like to keep it for a while. Behind that it's a Redbreast 12, and behind that is a North Star Spirits. What is it again? Glen Scotia North Star Spirits Royal Bruckler 11 years old. So over there we have another German bottler. It's a 19-year-old Mortlach, matured with a port cask finish. Quite nice, but not stellar. Behind that you get a dark sherry hogshead Craigellachie. I think it's 14 years old, approximately, yeah. And I'm sorry. You got a 5-year-old Macduff, matured in a sherry hogshead, which is like my youngest whiskey, I think. 5-year-old vintage, and it's really good for 5 years. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought it. I tried it before, and it's fantastic for a 5-year-old. So in this, we don't have an Aberlour 15 actually, but an independent bottling South Coast Islay by by North Star Spirits, which is very good. Should be a Lafroig. That's a classic Aberlour Arbonne, batch 49. Great batch if you ask me. Then you get the Port Charlotte CC01. Again, probably open this time. And next to it you got the Springbank Rundlets and Kildikins. It's been a while. They did this with the Hazelburn and the Longrow as well. Great whiskey, but nothing for newbies. Very complex, very hard to crack open, very hard to understand. But it's a good whiskey. It's quality whiskey, but not a sipper. And behind that you got a bottling of the Springbank 12. A newer bottling, one of the newer ones with the new labels, and behind that I think should be an older bottling of the 12. Still with the rest in the bottle for comparison's sake. So then you got another Scotch independent bottler, Creative Cask, David Stirk. That's a Glengarry, matured in a red wine barrique. It's very, very crazy. It's 7-year-old, a very extreme whiskey, not really a balanced or something, but something just funny, just a fun whiskey. And if you look at the color, I don't know if you can see the color. It's very reddish. You know, this is a sherry kind of brownish, but it's very reddish. So the barrique, red wine barrique, really comes through. Behind that, you got a 19-year-old Linkwood, by Creative Casks, and then the others are a Tobermory, which is actually a Lechic 10-year-old, and the other one is a Highland Park, I think, like 11 or 13-year-old Highland Park, I think 13-year-old. Okay, these are my whiskies. Are these my whiskies? Okay, maybe I forgot something. I'll go back very quickly. Okay, and there are 2 whiskies I forgot. I think around here I told you about the Stars edition and the other one. Oh yeah, this is not a 15-year-old Lafroig. What it actually is inside is much better than a 15-year-old Lafroig, and that's a Lagavulin. Lagavulin Fizz Ale 2014, like a 19-year-old cask strength Lagavulin. One of my favorite whiskies. Unfortunately, very expensive these days. Okay, that's it for now. Now you really got an overview. I hope you are happy, also you, Whiskey Jason. And I see you around. Have fun. Bye bye. This was Whiskey Hamster Hoagie Bear. Over and out.